What's up, skate fam? Welcome to another episode of Deez Skates. I'm your host, David Laliette. Some of you may be wondering why I haven't put out many videos lately. As most of you know, I live in Texas, and we're in our hottest season of the year right now, so even in the earlier hours of the morning, the temperatures can be nearly unbearable. I also changed job fields recently, and I'm working as a computer technician now. To occupy my downtime, I've been playing with these neat little Raspberry Pi computers. If you don't know what this is, it's basically a credit card sized computer that runs on its own version of Linux called Raspbian. But you can also install an operating system called RetroPie, which allows you to use video game ROMs to play games for various retro consoles like the Super NES, Sega Genesis, Nintendo 64, and even some arcade games. Now I know what you're thinking. David, you run a skating channel. What are you doing talking about all this techie nerdy stuff here? Well, recently, I've been thinking about how skating is represented in pop culture, particularly the gaming niche. We all know that skateboarding gets lots of positive coverage, and the skateboarding scene seems to be generally larger than any roller skating or blading scenes that I know of. Before we get too far, I want to make it clear that I completely support skateboarding, BMX, scooters, and really any practice that helps get kids into places like skate parks, rinks, and in general, positive athletic endeavors. But as a lifelong inline and quad skater, I can't help but wonder why rollerblading and other skating sports are not properly represented or marketed by media developers. Take Tony Hawk's Pro Skater for example. The original game released in September of 1999 and sold over 350,000 units by December. As sales grew, it spawned 16 other games over the course of the next 18 years and grossed $1.4 billion in sales. That makes it one of the most successful game series of all time. Again, I think it's awesome that multiple generations have probably been pulled into skateboarding because they started playing this great game, and that people who were already into skateboarding have something to play together. But where are the AAA title, inline, or roller skating games? While there have been quite a few titles that I won't have time to list, I'm going to talk about the ones I'm personally the most interested in or have a little experience with, and I'm going to be spanning multiple generations of gaming. The most notable rollerblading game series I can think of originally released as Jet Grind Radio for the Sega Dreamcast. It's been ported to other consoles and to PC on Steam as Jet Set Radio, as well as having its own Game Boy Advance release, which is, well, it wasn't great in my humble opinion. Either way, it had a cult following and eventually got a sequel titled Jet Set Radio Future. The problem is, it just had a cult following. In the grand scheme, it was so unpopular that I couldn't even find its sales records anywhere. I have no idea how many copies it sold or what the gross sales of this series were, because for the most part, no one is talking about it. While the game has some great features and is fun and playable from a skater perspective, it actually centers around the idea of skating around different cities and spraying graffiti everywhere while running from the police. I personally think this concept is great and wish the developers were still making games like this. That's really it for decent marketed skating games though. There's not much beyond that in the media spotlight. There are some other games that involve inline skating but aren't centered around it, such as the ESPN game series Extreme. I've never played it, but I've seen footage and it seems to have different sports rolled into one. There's skateboarding, inline skating, BMXing, etc. Also, the Nickelodeon series Rocket Power got its own game at one point, but like the Extreme series, it's a mix of sports. It's not really about skating, it just involves it. Next up is x-bladez, Inline Skater. This game had an original release on the Sony PlayStation, but it was another whose release was not very well marketed, so I've only heard of it recently. I have the ROM for it, but unfortunately I can't get it to work well enough to play it, so it's not a game I have much experience with. I have, however, seen it played, and while it looks okay, it's nothing in comparison to even the less popular Tony Hawk games. And the Game Boy Advance release is nothing short of awful. It plays like a race car game that replaced the car with a speed skater, who can jump awkwardly and has a terrible takeoff sprint. You can't even make the mistake of going over a curb around the track. Your skaters are such novices that they trip and fall anytime you deviate from the track. Rollerblade Racer for the NES console is another title I remember playing as a kid. As you can guess from the cover, this game seems to fall pretty short. It plays like a scaled down version of x-bladez for the Game Boy Advance. You're a novice character that can't even roll off of curbs without face planting. The tiniest of cracks are enough to lay your character out on the asphalt, and it very much plays like yet another race car game that has a skater inserted in place of vehicles. Lots of obstacles right out of the gate. From this game, you'd think everything is out to get rollerbladers. Finally, for inline skating, the last game on my list is called On a Roll. This is a seemingly well-designed, aggressive skating game. I learned about it from watching Tiago Inline Skater's channel. I don't know much about it, but it looks like fun, and when it goes on sale on Steam, I'm probably gonna grab it. The upside is that this title was released for the current gen Xbox and PlayStation, as well as the PC, so console and PC gamers have a chance to get in on this one together. The only thing I'm disappointed in, out of the gate, is that it looks like the game wasn't marketed very well. I haven't heard anyone else in either the skating or gaming scenes really talking about it. I'll leave a link to Tiago's video in the description so you can check it out if you're interested. For quad skating, the list gets even thinner. The only quad skating game I know about, personally, is called Jam City Roller Girls. Though I've never had the opportunity to play it, I wish I had been able to while it was available, but I don't know about it since it wasn't heavily publicized. I highly recommend you go look up a video of the gameplay on YouTube if you're into roller derby and video games. It's an official, with the licensed title that seemingly adheres to the rules of roller derby, at least the rules as they were when the game released. The game looks great, and it's extremely disappointing that it was only ever released for the Nintendo Wii on WiiWare, Nintendo's downloadable game and application service for the Wii, which was officially discontinued in January of 2019. So to my knowledge, you can't even get this game anymore. Super disappointing. On the upside, I was turned by a viewer to a roller skating game which got demoed by developer Ubisoft at E3 this year. The game's title is Roller Champions. At first glance, it looks like a no-holds-barred roller derby game modeled after the games of the 70s before the sport was considered a real, developed sport. But actually, it's something completely different. I don't know much about it yet, but the players seem to be chasing a ball and trying to throw it through rings along the edge of a giant banked roller derby track. Since I haven't played it, I can't judge it, but honestly, I don't know how I feel about this game yet. It could be fun if they do it right, but from the demo, I have some concerns. For one, the skating sound effects can be kind of annoying. It doesn't really sound like skates, but rather horses trotting along the skating track. The most notable issue I have with it is the lack of music present. So far, it seems like a game of sound effects and flashy colors, but it could be cool if it gets updated properly to the end. It's hard to say still, but I'll be watching this game closely to see how it develops. The one disappointing thing about it is that the game seemingly has a PC-only release planned, so even if it turns out to be pretty solid, console fans will probably have to sit this one out. There are other skating games out there that I've run across, but these are really the only ones I can think of that are worth offering an opinion of. I've seen gameplay of a couple of figure skating games for the PC, like Michelle Kwan's figure skating, and the Winter Olympic PC games as well. But of course, I can't forget all the NHL games that have come out over the years. Though no one I really know is into them, I'm sure they have a large following in the North with how many releases they've gotten since the original Nintendo and Sega Master System days. But I don't know if I'd call them skating games so much as sports games. I'd really be more tempted to lump them in with the NBA and NFL category of gaming. An honorable mention I can't forget is a title for the Sega Genesis called Streets of Rage. Though it's definitely not a skating game, the second and third installment in this arcade-style beat-em-up series featured a young man actually named Skate, who skates around in a generic pair of rollerblades laying down the pain. I mean, you can't get much cooler than knocking out baddies with flying sidekicks and a pair of inlines. I played this game all through my childhood, and it still remains one of my favorite retro game titles of all time. And I bet it's not surprising that I almost never play the game with any other character. Kudos to Streets of Rage for glorifying an inline skater as a bona fide badass. The 4th installment is in development as we speak, but unfortunately, there's no mention of skate being in this one. I could go on to mention skating anime, but I think I'll save the talk of Yuri on Ice, and one I haven't seen yet, Air Gear, for another day. I really would like to get your input on how skating has been represented in gaming and general nerd culture in the comments section below. I think it's clear that I wish there were more games to be found with skating as the main focus, that are actually developed well and marketed to be more than mediocre. I love that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater has done so much for the media scene in skateboarding, and it leaves me wondering, when do inline, roller, and ice skating get their breaks too? I think having our hobbies more present in the media of gaming culture could help to spread the love of skating and make it more popular. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you feel like you got some value from it, please click the like button and subscribe for more skating content. I've got more tutorials coming as soon as the weather is more tolerable, and hopefully this won't be my last video like this. I still have loads to say on this topic, and hope you'll be interested to hear about some of my favorite skating movies and animes in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you the next time I lace up.